Are y'all ready for some ranting? Cause I am. Alrighty. Ignore the closet door being open because Arya needs to be in there and she's not happy if she's not allowed in there. So it's just gonna have to stay open. So we're gonna be talking about my worst / disappointing books of 2022. So as I did in last year, I just want to preface that if you loved these books, if these books worked for you, I'm so glad. No shade, no tea to you, the authors who wrote them, whatever. They just personally did not work for me. Books are very subjective and we're all allowed to have our own opinions on them. And I'm going to try to keep it respectful, but y'all know sometimes I get a little wound up. So I also am not really prepared for this video, which is stupid of me. I'm just going to sit down in my reading journal and just look at all the books that I rated low and just talk about them. First up, I'd say on a disappointing book that I had at the beginning of the year that I didn't like was Merciless by Willow Winters. Let me kind of like angle this. We'll pop it in over to the side here. The first book in the All He'll Ever Be series or whatever. This was so boring, so bland. The characters had no chemistry. I didn't like the plot. I really didn't like much about this book, honestly. And it's like supposed to be a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Where is that? I don't see that. I have literally no idea where that came from. And I just straight up didn't like this book. Next up, another one. This is a thriller book. So like, I'm just going to put it in most disappointing. Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. I know that not that many people care about, that like watch my channel care about this genre. So I'm going to kind of speed past it. But I liked the book itself, but then the ending was just kind of like, I don't know. I was kind of disappointed with it. So that's why like thrillers I feel like are hard for me to read, because if the ending doesn't like blow me away, then it kind of like, I don't know, ruins the book for me. And that's how I kind of felt with this one. And I liked one of Alice Feeney's other ones, Sometimes I Lie, one of my favorite thrillers of all time. So I had high expectations and was just kind of disappointed. Okay, Normal People by Sally Rooney. I hated this book. Honestly, I think I gave it 2 stars on Goodreads and that should have been a 1 star. There was really not anything about this book that I liked. I think at the time I said that I liked the story between the 2 characters, which is like still fine. Like I think the story itself is okay, but once again, boring. I didn't like any of the characters. I really didn't like the writing style at all. I didn't like that there are no like quotation marks in there. I only read this because I was doing a book club with my friends at the beginning of the year and this was the choice for it, and I would never have picked up this book by myself and I will never pick it up ever again. What did I not like? The thing is this year I had a pretty good reading year. So I don't have too many, honestly. Oh, this one though. Hollywood Roommates by Elizabeth Briggs. So this one I was really looking forward to. I had never read anything by this author before, so I guess I couldn't have had like the highest expectations going in because I didn't have anything else to compare this to. But when I was doing my Goodreads clean out, I found this book buried in my Goodreads and it was a Why Choose Hollywood plus-sized heroine, right? I think she was plus-sized heroine romance where she's like laid off from her job and she needs somewhere to live, and one of her best friends is like, hey, why don't you move in with my brother and his 2 other roommates? They have a ton of space and they're like huge mansions, so like why don't you go move in? So she moves in with them, and I just remember this being like very average. Okay, again, I'm really not trying to like bash it, but I didn't like the writing style at all. I felt like it left a lot to be desired. And the characters, like I didn't feel any connection, like any emotional connection building between them. And honestly, even the physical connection, I felt it was kind of lackluster. None of the characters stood out to me. And honestly, it was just overall like a kind of predictable and boring book to me personally. I don't know. It just really didn't work for me. And I was disappointed because I thought the premise like sounded interesting and something I would enjoy. And I just ended up not really liking it at all. You know what? I'm going to include this even though I'm still going to keep going in the series, and that is Carnage by Sarah Bailey, the 4 Horsemen series by Sarah Bailey, I guess I should say. I read the first 2 books in this year, and I had really high expectations because I had seen so many amazing things about this series, and granted, I gave both books 3 stars. So, they're not like horrible. I'm putting them more in disappointing because I just had such high expectations for them, and I felt like the plot, like I'm so frustrated with these books by the plot because I finished the second book and they're long books. They're not like short. They're not like 200-300 pages. They're like 400-500 pages. And I felt like there's no plot progression. We're getting no answers. And finally, I think in the third one is when we're supposed to get things, but I don't want to have read almost like 1,000 pages of a book to get like the simplest of answers. And that's frustrating to me. But here's the thing with these. The spice in them is so freaking fantastic that I'm gonna keep going because they're so hot. But they were disappointing to me in the sense that I just thought that I truly thought they were going to be like 5-star reads for me, and they were not. Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco, I'm gonna put again in like disappointing. I think maybe too, I'm just kind of past like my YA fantasy phase, or at least like as of right now, like I'm just not really into YA fantasy. I was just kind of disappointed. I didn't think that this was like as exciting as I thought it was gonna be. I thought that Wrath was gonna be like a little like more, I don't know, wrathy, and he wasn't. And the heroine kind of annoyed me. So I don't know, again, it was like disappointing. I don't necessarily think it was like bad, it just was disappointing, and I still will continue with the series at some point. I'm just not motivated to do that anytime soon. I'm gonna put disappointing again. And this one, I don't know if it's a knock to this book, Mafia Mistress by MILA FINELLI. So I gave this one 3 stars. And here's the thing with this one is that I think it was my mood. I don't know if it was my mood or if it was the book, but I was in a slump when I read this, and so granted that could contribute, and maybe like I'd read it again and I'd have a different feeling on it, but right now I'm gonna say it was disappointing. I think because everyone was loving this book, and I love Mafia, and it was like at a time when like I felt like we needed a new like Mafia to like be loving, and everyone read this and loved it, and I was kind of like eh. And I'm still kind of that way on it. I did not like Fausto, the hero, like at all. I love like an asshole hero. And he was just like an asshole for quite literally no reason. Sometimes I was like, you're just like insanely rude. You're just rude. And I don't know. So it was like, it was disappointing for me. Again, it's not worst, but it is definitely disappointing for me. Well, here's the thing. I have a lot of like novellas, and it's like, I just don't have a strong feeling towards them whatsoever. So I don't really know if I want to like talk about those, because like I have a couple of Cassie Mint ones. Like I have Love Lessons by her, which is a student teacher one, and I think I just realized that maybe like Cassie Mint isn't the author for me. They're very insta-lovey, insta-lusty, and insta-lovey, and I get in novellas there does have to be a certain level of that, but in these I just almost feel like they're so like outrageous that I don't know. I have a hard time with them, so I don't think I'll really be reading any of hers moving forward. And kind of on the same vein as that, I had a couple of Jessa Kane ones on here, like An Angel for the Devil by Jessa Kane. I don't, again with this one, I don't know. It's a novella, so I feel like I also don't typically judge novellas and full-length books the same in my eyes, so I do kind of feel bad putting them on this because the chances of me like loving them is pretty slim, but there are those like gems that do really work, and this was not one of them. This girl, I mean, like if you know anything about Jessica Kane, like they're unhinged, which is fine, but this one specifically was like this girl whose mom pimped her out to their landlord to like help pay for their rent that they couldn't do, and then like they fall in love. I don't know. It's not like I went into this with high expectations, and I would say that I still, like, even my expectations were, like, not necessarily met. Kink Camp, Hunted by A. Anders. I was really disappointed by this because from the title, I felt like going into this, I'm like, this is going to be hot. It's all about this kink camp for adults that you can like go to. It's like this camp that you go away to, and everyone just gets to like fulfill whatever fantasies they want with other people who also want to do that. And I'm like, this is going to be insane. This was Cheyenne and I's first Smut Club pick, and we both had high expectations for this. We had heard great things, and it was so just a complete letdown. Like the spice was not even good. The story was not great, and overall, like it just fell flat. Like that's kind of the best way I can say, like it just fell flat. And for the name and for the premise, I was expecting like knee shaking smut, and this was just boring. So yeah, that was disappointing. Sorry, Harley LaRue, I love you, but Dirty First Dates Halloween Hunt. This one, I don't even know what I gave it on Goodreads. I literally have it marked as 1 star in my reading journal. This did not work for me. I really loved the first Dirty First Dates one, the arcade one, really liked that one. The museum was fine, not my favorite, but this one fell completely flat for me. Here's the thing with this one, there's like daddy kink in it, but they're like literally the same age, and they're like, what, 19 and 20? I'm like, it just doesn't work for me personally. I'm not like huge on that anyways, but it works if it's like an age gap or like dad's best friend, you know, when it's like that kind of like level. But I feel like when you're like the same age and you're literally younger than me when I'm reading it, I'm just like, I don't know, that doesn't work for me. It just didn't work for me at all. And also the vibes were very like early 2000s, like talking about like the style and like the phones, and I don't know. I was just kind of like, I don't want to be back in this time period. I really don't. So I don't know. It didn't work for me. Cold Dark Souls. And what was the other one? It's Cold Dark Souls and Sick Twisted Minds by Candace Wondrak. They're books 2 and 3 in the like Cruel Black Hearts series. So I read Cruel Black Hearts. That was one of our Out of Bounds book club picks, and I enjoyed that first book. I gave that first book 4 stars. I did really like it, and I was intrigued enough to keep going. And the second and third books just let me down. I lacked any sort of connection to any of the characters moving forward. I felt like it was dragged out a lot. The spice was like not interesting to me because it was very like detached, because Stella has like no emotions, and neither do the guys because they're all serial killers. So like there's no emotion that I felt in that. And it is like graphic in the way of like bloody and gory and like describing them killing people. Sometimes it's not like overly gory, but like at times it is. Okay, then I should just say it's gory. It is. And I'm just not a big fan of like blood and reading about someone's like brains leaking out of their head. Like, I don't know. For me, that doesn't like scream sexy. And yeah, so that was disappointing for me because I don't feel like it held up to the first book, in my opinion. Next up, again, another disappointing one, which again, I don't know if this was my mood or if it's the book, but Does It Hurt by H.G. Carlton. So I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars, and I don't remember if I rounded up or down on Goodreads. But the thing with this one for me is that I personally didn't connect with this book at all. And I don't think that this book is bad by any means. There are people who have liked it, but I personally didn't necessarily enjoy it that much. That's really disappointing because I love the cat and mouse duet. So I was really looking forward to this release, and I was just kind of let down. I don't know if it's because I wasn't in the mood for it, and like that could have depended on it. I don't know if I just need a reread of it, but the characters, I didn't really find either of them super likable. And they definitely have a strong hate to love, which is great because if you advertise enemies to lovers, I want them to legitimately be enemies. And they definitely were. Like, they definitely hated each other and they had a reason to hate each other. But I didn't love them. I didn't love their connection. I wasn't like obsessed with them. I did like the plot and like the creepiness of it. And I thought that at least at the end of the book, like I genuinely really liked the ending of it. I thought that it pulled itself together well and it made sense. The payoff was worth the buildup. But I was just disappointed that overall it didn't, like I thought it was going to be a home run and it definitely wasn't for me. I need to pause for a second because I'm about to get into a rant and I need to go and preheat my oven. So I'm going to go preheat it quick and then I'm going to come back for this rant. So hold on. Okay, my oven is preheating. Let's settle in here because this is quite literally my least favorite book I read this entire year, and that is Distorted by Nyla K. I have been wanting to try Nyla K for a while, and maybe this was the wrong book for me to start with because it put such a sour taste in my mouth regarding her books. So this one is a prison romance. It's like Alcatraz inspired, kind of like Alcatraz kind of prison where these people are shipped off to and kind of like wiped off the face of the earth kind of thing. And it's like really horrible. It's called Alabaster Penitentiary, I think. Main hero in this one, he gets sent there and he's not really sure why he's there because he just like robbed a bank. So he's kind of like, why am I here? And you unravel that throughout the story. I had a lot of issues with this book. First up, I don't get why anyone is using the R word to describe anyone, like R-E-T-A-R-D. You don't need to call anyone that. That's unnecessary, and I truly don't understand putting it down on paper in black and white and printing it. I don't understand that, and that's used in this. Hero, like, calls other people that. Not cool for me. And the other thing is some of, like, the homophobic slurs used in this as well. I get it that this is an MM romance and that our main hero was really struggling with his sexuality at certain points, or like not at certain points, he was struggling with his sexuality because he went from like dating women in the outside world to them being in this prison with all men. So I get it, like he's struggling with himself, but I felt like then him coming out by the end of the book and like being in love with another man was supposed to excuse the slurs in the beginning of this book. But to me, it was almost like gratuitous in a way where he's like actively describing other people, like seeing other guys in the prison like hook up in the shower, and how his stomach is like rolling over and how disgusting it is. And he's calling people slurs and like seeing people and like it making him sick and like physically sick. And I'm just kind of like, it was just, in my opinion, it was just a little overboard. I really didn't appreciate how much it was like described, how much like things disgusted him. And I don't know, that didn't quite sit right with me, and I didn't feel like then there was any sort of like remorse on his end. Obviously, I cannot speak from like a gay man's perspective. So like if I was talking to someone who had that perspective and like maybe they could like talk to me how like maybe if they related to this or something, or if they saw it in a different light. But for me personally, I just didn't appreciate that and how he like referred to other people. I don't know. I personally didn't appreciate that. And then the other thing is that it made no sense. The plot was literally bonkers and not in a good way. I didn't like the use of like kind of like the gotcha. I can't say anything without spoiling it. But then the other thing that kind of like turned me off a little bit was at the end in the author's note. It was like, if you didn't get it, you weren't paying attention kind of deal. And it's like, I was paying attention. You just didn't explain it well enough. Like you didn't execute it well enough. And I found the same problem in Serpent and White. Again, it was kind of like, I'm going to leave it up to like your own imaginations, which is one thing, but then also like, oh, if you reread it, you'd catch all these things. I'm not trying to reread your 500-page book immediately after I finish it. Like, I'm not going to do that. And that frustrates me. And like, don't tell me that it's like, I wasn't paying attention or like, I'm not smart enough to get your writing when maybe like when other people are confused too. And I'm talking to other people and they also didn't get your book. So that just kind of turned me off on it as a whole. Yeah, I don't know. I still want to try Push by her, but Distorted like really did not work for me. It is by far my least favorite book that I read this year. An Obsession by Regina Wade. Again, I didn't have high expectations for this, and I will say that they were not even met then. It's a stalker novella, and it was just outrageous. The Broken Bond series by Jay Bree. So we tried to do a read along on here, reading the 6 books in this series, and we abandoned it after I had read the first 3. I don't even know if everyone else got through the third. I don't know if anyone else got through the 3rd book actually, because I think I might have finished it first and was like, guys, I'm really not, like, no one was really liking it. But then by the time that I finished the 3rd one, and I think when I was like, guys, like, we still aren't really getting anywhere, everyone was kind of like, okay, can we call this? Because they're long books, and we just have so many other books that we want to be reading and spending our time enjoying. But I had really high hopes for this series because I have seen so many people read it and love it. And it's like a fantasy romance series. Why choose? And I was really excited, but I didn't like the heroine. I didn't really care for any of the heroes. I felt like the world was confusing. I felt like it just was kind of boring at times. We didn't get a lot of answers. And again, I understand that you want to keep people invested in your book as you're going, but I had a writing professor in college who said, like, unless if you are writing in the thriller genre, if you're alluding to any secrets like that a character has, if you are actively alluding to that in your writing, you should be telling the reader that by like the 25-30% mark of your book, unless if that is your entire plot twist, like in the thriller genre. Obviously you don't want to spoil it that early, but if you're like saying like, oh, but like I have a secret, or like, oh, but they don't know this, like, tell the reader about that, because it gets dragged out. And I really, like, when I heard that, I was like, oh, I like that. And I kind of agree with that take. And I definitely felt that way in this book. It was so many like, oh, I have these secrets. But by the 3rd book, we still didn't know half of them. And I was just annoyed. With it. And yeah, overall, I was very, very disappointed with it and did not really enjoy any of the first 3 books that I read. Next one, another disappointing one I'm going to put in Peace Lies Havoc by Amo Jones. I was really looking forward to this. This series has intrigued me for a long time. Cheyenne and I both really like Amo Jones, and we were like, let's do this one for Smut Club. And again, I found myself very confused, and I did not feel the romance necessarily between the main characters. If they wouldn't have ended up together by the end of it, I would have gone about my day just fine. I thought that the premise of it was cool. I just feel like the execution was kind of confusing, and I just overall just didn't really like it that much. I do plan to keep going on with the series, but this book specifically didn't really work for me. The Company of Fiends by Catherine Moon. Again, this one I gave 3 stars to. It was more just disappointing to me because I was really looking forward to this. So in A Lady of Rooksgrave Manor, which is the first book in this series, you see this circus kind of like actor, this like play between these monsters and these human women, and it's like them on stage getting it on and having these different scenarios. And reading that, I was like, imaginative, creative, groundbreaking, like hot. It was amazing, and I was so looking forward to this series because I just was like, this is going to be so hot, so enjoyable, so fun. And it just like, I don't know, it just kind of fell flat for me. There was like this murdering side plot that I felt like was kind of anticlimactic, and I didn't end up like loving. Our main heroine was like fine. Oh, the garbage people. What would a video be without the garbage people coming to interrupt it? I'm gonna at least finish talking about this book and then I'll take a quick break while they're here. Honestly, it was just kind of like a letdown for me, I think, because I had such high expectations. This smut like wasn't that exciting to me. There were like certain parts that I was like, oh, this is cool. Like there's one guy who was known as like the Gemini, and like he would split into like 2 people, 1 pain, 1 pleasure. Like that guy was interesting. But overall, I couldn't keep the characters straight. I think that's part of it. Like any of the monsters, I couldn't remember besides Constantine, who was like the Gemini. All of them blurred together, and the heroine was just kind of like meh. So yeah, overall, it was just very disappointing because I had such high expectations for it and it just kind of fell flat. Backing it up out of here, but we're almost done anyways. So next up on disappointing is Daisy Hates by Jessa Hastings. I loved Magnolia Parks, and Daisy Hates just didn't necessarily work for me. I still gave this book 3 stars. Like I don't think it's like a bad book by any means, but I lacked any sort of connection, I felt like, to the characters. And I think especially with Christian, I felt nothing from him. I felt no feelings towards him in any way, shape, or form. I felt like he was giving absolutely nothing and nothing to the story. So then like him and Daisy's relationship, I couldn't care less about. Like I don't care if they're together or not because I don't care about them. Daisy's fine. I connected a little bit more with her and I did like her story a little bit more, but honestly, Julian was the star of this book for me. So I would like more Julian next time. I mean, obviously he's like a POV in this, so you do get quite a bit of him, but I think just because I was so like, Christian, you're bland, you're boring, boo. Yeah, it made me like not enjoy it as much. You want to scratch? You need your scratching post right now? If it's not the garbage, it's the cats. If it's not the cats, it's something else. We're getting down to it here. Kick by C.D. Rice. I didn't like this whatsoever, but also I had never read anything by this author before, so I didn't really have any expectations. It was just by far one of my least favorite things I've ever read this year. Boring, no spice, or like, was that even what you could count as spice? I don't know. I didn't like it, and I have quite literally 0 interest in moving forward with the book. Like this did not grip me whatsoever and did not make me intrigued by the other books. It just made me decide that, yeah, I don't ever need to read anything like this again. Also, It Was Only a Kiss by Ashley Michelle. I gave this 1 star. With this one, this is a novella. I've never read anything by this author either, so again, I didn't really have any expectations going into it, but I was expecting like a fun taboo novella because it's a girl and her stepbrother and her stepdad, so I was like, at least give me like a fun taboo time. But then just like murder came out of nowhere, and they're killing people and hooking up with people in the wake of killing people, and I was like, where is this coming from? Like, this just totally took a turn where I was like, I was just not expecting this to turn into Murder City over here, and like this cute stepbrother that she has to all of a sudden like be threatening to kill his father if his father dared get in the way of their connection. I was like, what am I reading? Truly, what is going on here? It's unhinged behavior. And you know what? That's where I'm gonna stop because I do have some of these Christmas novellas that I'm doing that I did for the video that came out the like 2 days before this. So I think this is going up on Wednesday, and my video on Monday, which is like my reading Christmas novellas. But here's the thing with those is that I didn't go into those with high expectations, so I'm not going to include those on those lists. I didn't even give those ratings on Goodreads because that's not fair. I read them because I'm like, these are some of the most unhinged named novellas I've ever seen in my entire life, and I need to experience this with you guys. And so I didn't go into those expecting like 5-star groundbreaking stuff, so I don't feel like that's fair to include them in this. But anyways, those are my like worst / disappointing books this year. Like I said, I don't think there were that many. Of course, with my lack of preparation in this video, I did not include The Fine Print by Lauren Asher and Promises and Pomegranates by Savar Miller, but those both belong in this video. They both were just super disappointing and did not live up to the hype and expectations that I had. So honorable mentions
That is it for today's video. So like I said, ooh, my oven's ready. Okay, perfect timing. So like I said, this is going up on Wednesday because I have so many videos to get up at the end of this year, and Friday, finally, 2 days from now, is finally going to be my Banned Forbidden Taboo reading vlog part 3 that has literally been in the works since March of this year. Yeah, really getting down to the buzzer with that one, but it will be up finally. So anyways, that is it for today. Thanks for watching. I will have my top books of 2022 up next week, so best and worst. And anyways, that is it for today's video, and I will see you when I see ya.